I want to start by telling you something I've never said out loud before. Not to my brother, not to my therapist, not to anyone. I want to tell you the truth about the worst year of my life, and I want to tell it slowly, because the parts that matter most are the quiet ones, the ones that happened in ordinary kitchens and half-lit hallways before anyone realized something was breaking. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I was a husband for 11 years, a father for 7, and on a gray Tuesday morning in March, I sat in a courtroom in a suit that no longer fit right, watching the woman I used to love dismantle me in front of a judge like I was furniture she was getting rid of. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back, because the ending only makes sense if you understand the beginning, and the beginning was not dramatic. The beginning was ordinary. It was beautiful even. I met Celeste when we were both 24. She was working the front desk of a law office downtown. Not a lawyer, she'd remind anyone who asked, with a laugh that carried the whole room. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person she was paying attention to, even in a crowd of 50. I fell in love with that before I fell in love with her face, and I fell in love with her face almost immediately. We got married in the fall. Small wedding. Her parents, mine, a handful of friends. It rained the whole day and neither of us cared. I remember thinking, standing at the altar, watching her walk toward me in a dress she'd made 3 alterations to in the final week. I thought, this is it. This is the person I'll grow old next to. This is the person who will know me better than I know myself. For a long time, I was right. The first years were good, really good. We bought a small house with a leaky gutter we kept meaning to fix. We argued about things that don't matter, where to spend the holidays, whether to get a dog, whose turn it was to call the plumber. Normal stuff. The kind of stuff that, when you're in the middle of it, feels exhausting. But looking back now, I'd give anything to go back to those arguments, to that ordinary life. Then, our daughter was born. And I know every parent says this. I know it sounds like a greeting card, but when I held Lily for the first time, something in me became permanent, like a part of me that had always been liquid, just set, hardened into something that couldn't be undone. She had 10 perfect fingers and a sound like a cat sneezing, and I cried so hard the nurse asked me twice if I was all right. I was more than all right. I was terrified and grateful and completely certain that nothing in my life would ever matter as much as this small, furious little person. Lily grew, and as she grew, Celeste and we didn't. Not together, anyway. There's no single moment I can point to, no explosion, no dramatic fight, no affair I discovered on a Tuesday. What happened to us was slower and quieter, and in some ways worse than any of that. We drifted. Not apart, exactly. More like we both stopped swimming toward each other, and eventually the current just took us to different shores. By the time Lily was 5, Celeste and I were roommates who shared a mortgage and a bedtime routine. We were polite to each other the way strangers on elevators are polite. We said good morning. We coordinated schedules. We smiled at Lily's school events with the practiced ease of 2 people who'd agreed, without ever saying so out loud, to hold it together in public. But in private, we were already done. We just hadn't admitted it yet. A new chapter. The divorce conversation, when it finally came, was almost a relief. Celeste brought it up on a Sunday morning when Lily was at my mother's. We were sitting at the kitchen table with cold coffee, and I remember thinking as she started talking, okay, we're finally going to say it. What I did not expect was what came after the conversation. What I did not expect was who Celeste became the moment the word divorce was on the table. I want to be clear, I don't hate Celeste. I don't think she's evil. I think she was scared. I think she looked at the life we were dividing and decided somewhere deep in a place she may not have even been conscious of that she was not going to walk away with less than she deserved. The problem was, her definition of what she deserved included our daughter, entirely, exclusively. She told her lawyer that I was an absent father, that I was emotionally unavailable, that Lily had expressed on multiple occasions that she felt unsafe around me. Unsafe around me. I want you to understand what it feels like to hear that sentence in a courtroom about your child, about the person you have read to sleep every single night for 4 years, about the girl who calls you when she has a nightmare, who asks for you, specifically you, when she's sick or scared or just needs someone to hold her in the dark. It feels like the floor drops out. But I didn't break, because I had been through enough by then to know that the truth doesn't always show up on schedule. Sometimes you have to wait for it. Sometimes you have to hold your ground in the dark and trust that the light is coming. Long 2 seconds. I just didn't know the light was going to come from a 7-year-old girl with a secret in her pocket. The morning of the custody hearing, I woke up at 4:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I stared at the clock for 40 minutes before I gave up on sleep entirely. I made coffee I didn't drink. I ironed a shirt I'd already ironed the night before. I stood in my daughter's bedroom doorway for a long time. She was staying with my mother that week, and I looked at her empty bed and her scattered stuffed animals and the drawings she taped to her wall of the two of us holding hands under a yellow sun, and I thought, whatever happens today, I cannot fall apart. I repeated that to myself all the way to the courthouse. Whatever happens, do not fall apart. Celeste was already there when I arrived. She was standing in the hallway with her attorney, a sharp, polished man named Gerald, who had never once looked at me like a person. She was wearing a dark blazer. Her hair was neat. She looked calm in a way that felt practiced, rehearsed. She didn't look at me when I walked in, not once. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. I'd imagined something cinematic, high ceilings, wooden benches packed with spectators, the gravity of the setting matching the gravity of what was being decided. Instead, it was a beige room with fluorescent lights and a judge who looked like she'd seen everything and been impressed by nothing. Her name was Judge Patricia Holloway, mid-50s, reading glasses on a chain. She had a stillness to her, the kind you earn by spending 20 years watching people lie to your face and still having to find the truth underneath. The hearing began. Celeste's attorney went first. Gerald was good, I'll give him that. He painted a picture of a man who was present in the house but absent from his daughter's life, who worked late, who disengaged, who left the emotional labor entirely to his wife. He mentioned 3 incidents: a birthday party I'd been late to because of a work emergency, a parent-teacher conference I'd missed, a Saturday morning when Lily had told her mother that Daddy was tired again. That last one hit the hardest, not because it was a lie. I had been tired. I had been going through the worst year of my life while trying not to let my daughter see it. But hearing her words used against me like that, words she probably spoke without even knowing what tired really meant, that was something I had not prepared for. My attorney objected 3 times. The judge sustained twice. Gerald didn't skip a beat. Then came Celeste herself. She sat in the witness chair and she cried. Not theatrically, carefully. The way you cry when you've practiced crying and don't want it to look like you've practiced. She said she was afraid. She said Lily had begged her on more than one occasion not to send me to her house for the weekend. She said she had documentation. Documentation. I stared at those pages and I felt something in my chest go cold. My attorney leaned in and whispered that we challenged the authenticity. I nodded, but I also knew what the judge was seeing: a mother with documents, a father with nothing but his word. By the time we broke for lunch, I knew we were losing. My attorney was careful not to say it directly.
He said things like, "We still have our witness," and "The afternoon session is where we make our case." But I'd been watching Judge Holloway's face all morning, and I knew what I was seeing. I'd seen it on teachers' faces when a child tells a story that confirms what the adult already suspected. The quiet, settled look of someone whose opinion is already forming. Then, the afternoon session began. My attorney called his first witness, a family therapist who had seen Lily for several months. She testified that Lily had a strong, healthy bond with both parents, that she had never expressed fear of her father, that in fact, Lily frequently drew pictures of the two of them together and spoke of him with affection and detail. Gerald cross-examined hard. He was good at planting doubt without planting evidence, asking questions that sounded like accusations without actually being accusations. The therapist held her ground, but I could feel the room staying exactly where it had been all morning. Balanced, maybe, but balanced in Celeste's favor. Then something happened that no one in that room had planned for. The bailiff stepped forward and said there was a matter the judge needed to address. Something had been submitted, not by either attorney, not by any adult in the room. By a child. I turned around, and there was Lily. She was standing in the back of the courtroom with my mother, who looked as startled as anyone. Lily was wearing her purple jacket, the one with the little stars on the collar that she'd picked herself at the store last fall. She had her tablet in both hands, and she was looking directly at the judge, with an expression I had never seen on my daughter's face before. Not scared, not uncertain. Completely, terrifyingly calm. The Judge Holloway looked at her over those reading glasses and said quietly, "Young lady, did you have something you wanted the court to hear?" And my daughter, my 7-year-old daughter, raised her hand like she was in class, and she said in a voice that was small but absolutely steady, "I recorded something. Daddy doesn't know about it, but I think you should hear it." The room went completely still. I looked at Celeste. For the first time all day, she looked at me. And her face had gone the color of paper.
There are moments in life that don't feel real while they're happening. Moments where your brain seems to step back from the experience and watch it from somewhere slightly above, observing, cataloging, waiting to actually feel it until later, when it's safe to feel it. That moment, watching my daughter walk toward the front of that courtroom with her tablet in her hands, was one of those moments. Judge Holloway called a brief recess. The attorneys conferred. Gerald immediately argued that the device should not be admitted, that a child bringing unauthorized material into a custody hearing was procedurally improper. My attorney countered that a child's direct testimony and any evidence she wished to present was absolutely within the court's discretion to consider. The judge listened to both of them. Then she looked at Lily again, my daughter, standing patiently near the bailiff, still holding her tablet with both hands, still wearing that expression of absolutely unnerving calm. Judge Holloway said, "I'm going to hear what she has." Gerald tried one more objection. The judge did not look at him. She said simply, "Counselor, sit down." He sat down. The bailiff set up a small speaker near the judge's bench. Lily walked up and connected her tablet. She moved with the careful focus of a child who had rehearsed this moment many times in her head. And my heart broke watching her because I realized she had. She had rehearsed this alone. A 7-year-old had carried this plan by herself for however long it had taken her to work up the courage to walk through those doors. I looked at Celeste. Her attorney had leaned over and was whispering to her urgently. She didn't respond. She was staring at the tablet. And then the recording started. The audio was slightly muffled, the way recordings sound when a device is sitting in a jacket pocket or on a shelf in another room. But it was clear enough to hear two voices, a woman's and a child's. The woman's voice was Celeste's.
I am not going to repeat everything that was on that recording. Some of it I've never told anyone. Some of it I'm still working through with a therapist. But I will tell you the shape of it. I will tell you what the judge and the attorneys and everyone else in that room heard over the next 4 minutes and 17 seconds. They heard Celeste coaching Lily, telling her what to say to the therapist, telling her what words to use when she talked about her father, telling her that if she said the right things, the specific phrases Celeste had given her, then Lily would get to stay with her mommy and everything would be okay. They heard my daughter in the recording say, "But Mommy, Daddy doesn't yell at me." And they heard Celeste say, "I know, baby, but you need to say it anyway, for us, okay?" The room was silent in a way that silence usually isn't. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the presence of something heavy, something settling over every person in that courtroom like a physical weight. I couldn't look at anyone. I looked at my hands. I looked at the table. I thought about every bedtime story, every nightmare I had sat through beside her bed until she fell back asleep, every Saturday morning pancake I had burned because she wanted chocolate chips and I always put in too many. Every time she had reached for my hand in a parking lot, every time she had called me from her mother's house just to say goodnight, every time she had looked at me the way that only your child looks at you, like you are the safest place in the world. And I thought, she knew. She knew the whole time. She had heard her mother say those things, and instead of breaking under the weight of it, instead of doing what she was asked, my 7-year-old had done the only thing she could think of. She had pressed record. She had kept the secret long enough to bring it somewhere she thought it would matter. She had brought it to the only adult in the world she trusted to do the right thing with it. A judge. The hearing didn't end dramatically. There was no explosion. Gerald asked for a recess, and the judge denied it. There was a quiet, measured conversation at the bench. Judge Holloway spoke to Lily privately in her chambers with a court-appointed child advocate. The session reconvened, and the judge made her ruling. Primary physical custody granted to me. Supervised visitation for Celeste pending review. A formal investigation opened into the coaching allegations. A referral made to Child Protective Services, not because Lily was in danger, the judge was careful to say, but because what had been documented on that recording constituted emotional manipulation of a minor. Gerald left without speaking to anyone. Celeste sat in her chair for a long time after everyone else had stood. I walked over to Lily. She was standing by the door with my mother, who was crying in that silent way older women cry when they've run out of words. I knelt down in front of Lily. I looked at her, and I didn't say anything for a moment because I genuinely could not speak. She looked at me with those enormous, serious eyes, and she said in a voice so small I almost didn't hear it, "Daddy, I didn't want you to lose me." I held her for a long time, right there in the doorway of that courtroom, and I let myself feel everything I had not let myself feel all day, all year, maybe longer. I don't know what Lily understood about what she did. I don't know how much of the courtroom she processed, how much of the legal language filtered through her 7-year-old brain into something coherent. I don't think she thought about it in those terms. I think she just knew that someone she loved was in trouble, and she did the only thing a child can do when every adult around them has stopped telling the truth. She told it herself. It's been 2 years since that day. Lily is now 9. She still sleeps with the same stuffed elephant she's had since she was 3. She still asks for pancakes on Saturday mornings, chocolate chips, too many. She still reaches for my hand in parking lots, though she's starting to do it less, the way children slowly do, as the world becomes slightly less enormous and they need your hand slightly less. I am aware every day that I could have lost her, that I almost did, that the thing that saved us was something I had nothing to do with, a small girl with a tablet and the courage to use it. If there's something I want you to take from this story, not a lesson exactly, just something, it's this. Children see more than we think they do. They hear more than we protect them from, And sometimes, when everything else has failed, when every adult in the room has chosen self-interest or fear or silence, sometimes a child is the only one who still knows in some uncomplicated way what the truth is and what to do with it. Thank you for being here tonight. This was a hard one to tell. If it reached you, if it reminded you of someone you love or something you've been through, or just made you hold your kids a little closer tonight, then it was worth every word. I'm Uncle Jay, and this has been the Tale Vault.